A24's Talk to Me might be the best horror movie of the year, and probably one of the best movies of the year in general. This movie comes from the Philippou brothers, which are also known for their Raka Raka YouTube channel, which they made violent comedy videos, typically starring Ronald McDonald.
Sorry, Ron, this isn't a part of the script.
I was lucky enough to go to an early screening for this movie, and suffice to say, I was impressed. I mean, it's been so long since I've seen a horror movie this well-rounded. There's so much tension and so much build-up. I mean, it takes probably a quarter into the movie until things really start kicking off, and that's not a negative thing. This movie never resorts to using cheap tactics like jump scares, loud noises, and over-the-top violence and gore to sell itself. That being said, there's definitely gore present here, but it feels necessary within the story, and it really moves you. It's a common trope in indie horror to show as much gore and shocking imagery as possible and go full exploitation to get people to watch your film. Or to have a narrative so depressing that it leaves the audience with a sense of dread that we often mistake for good horror. This movie never feels the need to do any of that. The performances in this movie were all around incredible, but the true standout was definitely Sophie Wilde, who plays Mia. Her performance was incredible, which is interesting because I haven't seen her in anything else before, but I have a feeling that that's going to change after this movie. So without giving away too much, because I definitely recommend going into this movie as blind as possible, it follows a group of friends that come into contact with a hand, an embalmed hand, that can allow them to contact and get possessed by the dead. The hand allegedly belonged to a medium who had her hand cut off and embalmed. Something strange about this movie is the way it's marketed and being talked about has led people to believe it's focused around TikTok or a trending social media post or something, which is present in the film, but it has nothing to do with the actual content of the movie, essentially. And that's a good thing. There's so many horror movies today that rely on a social media element, a trending idea, and they've all been pretty bad. And that goes into me saying, I think this movie has some of the best depictions of Gen Z in horror. It's pretty clear that writers today have a lot of trouble writing Gen Z because of the way Gen Zers communicate and such, but I think it probably has to do with the fact that this was written by two YouTubers that are themselves pretty young. I think they're around 30. So all of this leads me into why this movie works so well. And that's the pacing, the writing, the acting, and the characters. They all work together to make you legitimately scared and anxious about what happens to the main characters in this movie. I was on the edge of my seat at times, in anxiety. It's funny to me to list this off as a huge positive because it should just be a basic requirement in horror that you care about the main characters. But we've gotten so far removed from that at this point that a lot of horror doesn't care about a well-rounded story. If I had to think of any negatives, it would be that there's a few horror movie moments where the characters make sort of questionable decisions. And they're not too glaring, but I've noticed that a lot with horror movies where maybe a character should try to convince the public that it was supernatural and should just be upfront and honest about things, because there wouldn't be too much of a drawback outside of the generic, oh, this person's crazy. And I understand that the rebuttal is typically no one would believe them and they would look crazy, but there's just some points in here where I feel like they didn't really even attempt to show what that would look like or why they're not saying anything about it. It's a very small thing, and there was a couple other strange moments. I remember at one point in the movie, one of the characters goes home and comes back to a hospital, and they're still wearing the clothes with blood on them. At least that's what it looked like to me. And it just felt like a strange editing moment, possibly, that they showed her going home at night and then coming back the next day, it looked like, or at least later that same day, and they were still wearing a shirt with blood on the sleeves. These are also very small things that I just thought were funny and wanted to point out. Any of the issues with this movie are so small that they don't detract from the overall experience. So I highly recommend going to see this movie It comes out 1 week after Barbie and Oppenheimer, so I really think it needs all the help it can get. So if you like this video, love movies, drop me a follow on my Letterboxd or this channel, and I will be uploading more in the future.